everyone, and welcome to Successful Women Talk, the #1 business show for women. And I am Sheila Butler, and this is the place where creatives and product-based business owners come to learn more about growing their business, working smarter, being productive, and reclaiming their time. That's right. If there is such a thing, I don't know if there is, but if there is such a thing as true work-life balance, we're going to explore it. So today on the show, I have Handley, and you probably know her as the Chief Content Officer at MarketingProfs. I think of her more as, if content is king, she's queen. We're talking content creation, multiple personalities, great story. You're going to have to tune in to learn more about that. Storytelling, brand building, and the truth around why most business blogs are boring. And here's today's question. What would your marketing look like if your customer signed your paycheck? So that's a great topic, and let's jump in to find out more. Hi everyone, this is Sheila Butler with Successful Women Talk. I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. On today's episode, we have Handley. She is the Chief Content Officer at MarketingProfs. She's an author, a thought leader, and I'm just most excited to have her on the show. So welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm excited to be here too.
And we are excited to have you. I have admired your work for a while, so super excited to have you on the show.
Awesome.
So, usually the first question I ask is tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how that helped you get to where you are today.
Sure. So I am a former journalist and editor who kind of came into the marketing space sideways, so to speak. I was a reporter for the Boston Globe. I was a writer for lots of business magazines, including some consumer magazines like those magazines that are in the back of airline pockets. And then in 1997, I co-founded a website called Clicksy.com. Sold it 3 years later, and from then on the internet, I was known as a marketer. So I come at marketing very much from the content angle because that's my background. I joined MarketingProfs in 2002, and I've been here ever since. It's the longest job, it's the longest job I've ever had, essentially.
I love that. Now, I think I read somewhere that you started writing really early in your life, like a youngster.
Yeah, yes. I did, right. I wanted to be a writer when I used to spell it with 2 T's, essentially. It's like I wrote in my diary when I was 7, I want to be a Ritter. And so it's always been part of my DNA, being a writer, being a content creator, so to speak, before they were really called that. But I always wanted an audience. That was the other part of it, too. So I always felt like, writing in a diary to me was kind of boring. It still is. I do it sometimes, but it's never been anything that I connected with. What I really love is writing to engage people, to have an audience. So when I was really young, at school, they offered us the opportunity to be part of a pen pal program with children all around the world. So I was maybe, 9 or 10, 11, something like that. So I started doing that, and I really loved communicating with somebody. In this case, it was that my pen pal was in Malaysia. And so I thought, what if I had a bunch of different pen pals, because it was such a slow process. You send a letter to Malaysia, 6 weeks later you get a letter back, you send another letter to Malaysia. It just wasn't immediate enough for me.
Right.
And so I applied to get these pen pals from all over the world, essentially using different names, because in my mind, there was some database somewhere that had already assigned me a pen pal, so I couldn't do. So I invented, maybe 10 or 11 personas, for lack of a better word, and I started communicating with kids all over the world, and I had these elaborate schemes, these elaborate lifestyles. I had different families, I had different names, I was always the same age, but...
How did you keep up with that?
I had a notebook, essentially, that I kept notes on my various personas, and it's like, oh, right, this is the one where I live on a farm and I have a twin. Right, okay. Yes.
That is great. I love that story.
Yeah, it finally ended one day when I was writing to this little boy in Australia, and he contacted me. He called my house, and I was completely freaked out. I was like, all right, I'm done here. I'm done, because the charade is over.
I'm going to get caught.
Yeah, my mother called me, to the kitchen, because remember that was back when there was only one phone in the house, and it was in the most public spot. So she came into my room and she said, "You have a call from a David in Sydney?" And I was like, "What?"
Hold on, let me pull out my notebook.
I was like, all right, I'm done. I can't do this.
I've been outed. I know what's going on now. That is great. I love that. You know, I always wanted to have pen pals and have a great ride, but I'm a terrible writer. So, which is why I do a video show. So I love that.
Yeah, well, I'm inherently uncomfortable on video, so.
You are?
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess it just happens that I'm a talker, so it's easier for me. They say I've never met a stranger.
Right. You must be an extrovert then.
Pretty much an extrovert, yep. Well, let me ask you this. So you co-founded ClickZ, which
Right.
is similar to MarketingProfs in a way, right?
Yes, essentially. It was very similar. I mean, they technically are probably our competitor. But yeah, I mean, at the time that we founded it in 1997, it was pretty much groundbreaking in the sense that it was one of the only sources for interactive news and marketing online. You know, this was an era when a web presence meant having a brochure-like website, and it was pretty static. You know, I mean, email was kind of new. One of the first events that we had as part of ClickZ was an email marketing conference, and that was a big deal. It was like 1999 when we put on the first one, and this was before, you know, social media, before blogging, before any of the stuff that we now know as being part of the web experience. So, you know, it was a different time.
So you were like ahead of the curve. I love people that think like that. I think that's amazing. Now let me ask, so when you sold it, then you ended up going and doing the similar thing. So I think some people think, oh gosh, I've finally created a business. It's doing well. I'm going to do this forever. But you guys ended up selling it, and then you started doing the same thing again. How does that happen?
Yeah, it's actually not exactly the same thing. I mean, I've kind of been in the same marketing space for a while. I mean, I definitely have some longevity here, but you know, like I said, I mean, ClickZ was a business it was frankly just an online news. I mean, it was a website, online newsletter. It was very much a publishing model, you know, and there was none of this. Like I said, it was pre-social, it was pre-blogging, it was pre, you know, any of the things that are kind of the lifeblood of the internet today. Pre-podcasting, pre-videos, you know, all this stuff. And so, you know, what changed really was the industry. I mean, the whole internet shifted to being a much more social place. And so that's really what has kept me engaged and involved for so long, because things have evolved. So the model is kind of the same in the sense of, you know, yes, we're giving marketers information about how to market on the internet, how to use digital tools. But, you know, those tools have changed tremendously.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. This is a little bit off subject, but I know I read or heard somewhere that you had also signed a non-compete for a couple of years.
Yes.
When I recently sold my business, I did a non-compete for a couple of years, and I swear I will never do that again. I loved being off work for a while, but it put me almost I had to almost start over. And I think I read somewhere that you kind of worked for free for a while because you almost had to start over in a sense.
Wow, you really did your homework, didn't you? I'm totally impressed.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so I did sign a non-compete. It was a condition of the sale. As I said, we had ClickZ.com for 3 years. And honestly, you know, I mean, I had a baby in 1997. So my daughter was 3 years old when we sold the company. And so it was also during this really, really crazy time, right? I mean, it was the dot-com era, really, that became the dot-bomb era. And so it was intense. I mean, 3 years of intensity, having a young business, having a young child, and an older child at the time. Well, actually, I still do have an older child, but he was, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Anyway, so it was, I was happy to have a break, really. I really was. And then part of the reason why I offered to work for free was because I met Alan Weiss, who's the CEO of MarketingProfs, the founder. And I love the company so much. I love the model. I thought Alan was fantastic. And I was just like, you know what? This could go somewhere. MarketingProfs wasn't making any money at the time, so essentially they couldn't afford me. But that was okay. Because at the time I was like, you know what? I just want to get back into this. And it's felt like a lifestyle to me, where ClickZ felt like, you know, a business that we were always going to grow and sell. That was always our exit strategy. Where MarketingProfs, again, 10 years ago, felt like, okay, this is the kind of business that I can, you know, stay home with my kids, you know, hang out by the pool, publish a newsletter in the morning. It didn't quite work out that way. Life has a funny way of changing when you, or, you know, basically when it made its own plans for me.
Exactly.
But, you know, that's basically why I decided. I was like, oh, you know what, I'll hang in there, I'll be patient. I'll do the content. Alan was very into the technology piece of it, and he loved that end of it. He handled the advertising, I handled the content. It was beautiful.
It was a great relationship. You were both able to find your strengths and work off of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it wasn't long that I worked for free, but it was, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And
well, let me ask you this. You guys also over there, you do some paid content, which some people are frown upon that. And I think, for me, I think it's great. I think that you offer such great free content. And then what you do for paid content, it's not that expensive and it's good stuff. So how did that come about? And did you guys get any, like negativity and backlash because of, say, hey, we're going to jump out there and do some paid content?
Yeah, not really. I mean, there was no negative backlash per se. I mean, what we found is that there is always a subset of your audience who will not pay for content. And that's okay, because that's the advertising side of the business for us. So we will, we kind of monetize that audience differently. But then our paid content area has actually done incredibly well. We've evolved it since we started. We initially started selling content like white papers and ebooks and webinars as wrapped up in a membership model. We've now evolved that to almost the next stage through MarketingProfs University. We're actually offering training and education programs to some pretty big companies. And so, we found it actually that it's been a really good evolution of MarketingProfs, because, in an era where everybody is a publisher, right? What becomes of the traditional publisher? How do we differentiate ourselves when our competition is suddenly every other marketing agency and business out there who's trying to attract the same, kind of marketers, or is going after the same audience we are? And so the paid content model, in a way, kind of gave us a foothold into knowing that, yes, we can sell content, we can evolve our business and get into training and education, because we kind of had the, I don't know, I guess not really leverage, but I guess what's the word? What's the word when you have some credibility? That's the word. So
I'm glad you came up with that.
Yeah, I know. So we had the credibility, and that allowed us to kind of evolve.
Gotcha.
In MarketingProfs itself.
Now, talking about content, you created a terrific book, which I told you before we started recording quickly. There's a second book that I read about creating content. And I need to go back actually probably now and reread the book, because now I understand it more, right? But how, I get the question a lot. Let's say that I have a business that sells baby room accessories. I have a kids line. How do I create content around that is engaging and that will get, without always talking about my product? I hear that question a lot. My industry or my niche is boring. How do I create content around that? That's, great content.
Right. I mean, it's really about figuring out who you're selling to, right? So what are their pain points? What are their problems? What content can you help them with? So if you have a baby furniture company, for example, maybe instead of talking about furniture, what are you really talking about is who you're targeting. What are their problems? These are people who are becoming new parents, for example. Right. So that's really where you should aim your content. So it's not about your furniture. It's about what your furniture, is who you're selling that furniture to and what their problems are. So really making the customer the hero of your story is kind of the key to engaging content, to good content. So in that scenario, for example, you might create a blog for new parents in your particular town if you have a retail outlet, if you have a bricks and mortar facility, or maybe you do some sort of parenting site or new parenting site or adjusting to parenthood. I mean, there's just innumerable ways you can go with that. But the key is always to really think about your customer. It's kind of a marketing 101 thing. It's not about you, it's what you do for others, right? It's what you do for your customer. And I think that's something that marketers have known for a long time, but it often doesn't translate into the content that they or the business is producing.
And it seems like people are finally coming around to that, because for a long time business blogs were really kind of boring and it was only about the products.
Yes.
And nobody, I don't want to read that. So why would someone else want to read this? So I love it. It does seem like people are kind of coming full circle with those types of things.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I've tried to do my part and kind of evangelize that concept. That's what our book, Content Rules, is all about. Trying to create the kind of stuff that's going to attract an audience to you because you're providing valuable information to them. Valuable or useful or just fun, something that is really going to attract people because they want to consume it, not just because you have to put it out there.
Right. Another thing that I find with business blogs a lot of times is they're like we said, a little bit boring, but I just told you before we started, I love a good sense of humor, and I think I like throwing that into content. What is your opinion on being more you, finding your voice? And if your voice is more kind of laid back and humorous, it's okay to use that in content. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity, right? You want to show your human side, even in a B2B scenario, even if you are a business who sells to other businesses, ultimately you are still selling to a person. And so I think it's great. I mean, I love this trend when I see it of business blogs and business content being a whole lot more human. Because I think there are very few situations where it's not okay to be human.
I agree.
I think when, if you're selling, say, I don't know, caskets, maybe you want to tone it down a little bit, but
yeah.
But it's still, I think it's a great opportunity, and that's really fundamentally how I think about content. It's not a task. It's not like another thing that you have to do. Really, it's an opportunity to connect with the people that you want to connect with, your customers, your prospects. And I think it's kind of a mind shift, but when you shift your mind in that direction, when you embrace content as an opportunity above all, then I think that's when some really exciting things can happen.
I agree. It's kind of I love thinking back now, but a few years ago, I had an offline business. Again, I sold that, started online. I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know what SEO meant. I didn't know anything about creating content. I was clueless. Well, when I first started my blog I have a kids line, and I look back now and I go, oh my goodness. It was painful to write. As I mentioned, I don't like writing anyways. I prefer talking. And I was writing the most boring stuff. But now I understand it's just, you come full circle. But when you first start out, you're just almost, it's tough because you're clueless.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I think, it's important to start somewhere. That's the only way you're going to find your voice as a writer, or as a content creator. Especially for somebody like you and people who are sole proprietors, I think it's really important to just get out there and try it. Try it on a personal level first if it makes you uncomfortable to think about representing your business, online, essentially, if it feels terrifying. But I think it's an opportunity. Look at what people around you are doing. Look at your competitors. How are they communicating? Get some inspiration from there. I always one of the things that I talked about. We were talking about Blog World before we started recording. Blog World New Media Expo, which where we met essentially a couple of weeks ago in Vegas. And one of the things I talked about there was, what would your marketing look like if your customer signed your paycheck? So that to me
that's great.
That's kind of the essence of good content. If your customer signed your paycheck and not your CEO or not your boss or not your client or whoever, what would your marketing look like? And that's kind of the shift that I think businesses need to make.
I love that. It's funny because I do some business consulting. I'm kind of a systems and logistics customer service nut. So that was my specialty in my business. My business partner was the design person, and I made the business run. So I found that when I first started on social media, I found it a little bit overwhelming, but I quickly realized that it's nothing more than a way to engage with people. I always tell people it's almost like it's taken the place of the phone or the water cooler. You kind of feel the same way with social media?
Yeah, I do. I started on Twitter, for example, 5 years ago, and it was a smaller universe back then. But for me, especially working in a home office, it definitely was my water cooler. Now I use it a little bit differently. 5 years ago, as I said, it was smaller, and the social world, I guess, felt a little bit more of like the Wild West, there just wasn't the same kind of gravitas about it, for lack of a better word. And so, I was a lot more silly. I was probably a lot more personal, Now I really make a distinction between personal and personable, because I feel like that I am personable on Twitter, for example. I'm at MarketingProfs on Twitter, so I'm kind of the face of the company. But at the same time, I'm not personal anymore. So things have shifted a little bit for me in the sense of, the way that I engage there. But that's just for me. That's just for me because as I said, I'm representing a company and I have, a lot of followers on there. And people don't want to know about, my personal life or about my kids, nor do I want to share that kind of stuff with
Right.
150,000 of my closest friends on the Twitters. So I've kind of shifted the way I use it, but ultimately, I'm still me on there. I don't.
Right.
I don't hire people to help me out with it.
No, you actually respond as well. That's pretty cool.
I try. It's a little tricky. It gets harder
I'm sure.
When you get up in there in the numbers. It's definitely more of a challenge to try to respond. So I try really hard, but
I have to laugh because here I go again. But I was listening to something you said on a video or something, and you said what drives you crazy, like with Twitter, are autoresponders.
Yeah, right. That was on.
Oh my goodness, I'm the same way. I don't get that.
I know it, and somebody called me out on that for on Twitter the other day, and they said when I was complaining about that, there's one thing I hate is robo DMs. Like when they're clearly automatic direct messages when you follow somebody.
Right.
It triggers a robo DM to you, and they say something like, let's be friends on Facebook, or to my blog, and it's horrible, right? It's just. It's just so not in the spirit of what Twitter is all about. And so I was kind of ranting about that a little bit on Twitter. And someone said, well, what do you expect when you follow 150,000 people, and actually, hilariously so, I wasn't even talking about that account. I was talking about my other account, which is @Handley on Twitter. And that's the one that I started that account. I've had it for a long time, but I kind of resurrected it recently. And that's actually where I was getting a lot of DMs because I'm building that a little bit more actively than.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's funny because usually when I get a follower, I will try and engage in a tweet and say, hey, thanks for connecting. I love no more, whatever. Yeah. And this guy said to me one day, that's so unprofessional. It's like a DM, an auto DM. I said, it's really not. I mean, I'm really reaching out. So I don't know, but yeah, it was one of those things.
Really
it was really me.
Yeah, good for you. Don't take that.
I just ignored it. I was like, okay, well, fine. If you don't, that's fine. If you don't like it, hi, anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if someone, let's say that someone wanted to start really creating good, do you have like maybe 5 tips or takeaways that someone could have for maybe creating better content or really getting out there and making a difference in their niche that maybe they're not doing right now, or just a quick takeaway?
All right, 5. Let's see.
Or 2.
Or 2. Or 1.
Or 1.
Well, one of them I already shared with you, but think about what your content would look like if your customer signed your paycheck.
I love that. Love it.
Not boss or your client. Secondly, really make the customer the hero of your story. The thing that we talked about just a few minutes ago, about, well, how do I create engaging stuff? Start with talking to your customers. Start with going out and maybe doing a podcast with them. What are your challenges as a new parent? What are the things that keep you up at night? What are you worried about? Publish that. Content isn't writing either is another thing. Sometimes it is, but it's also video Skypes like this one. It's podcasts. It's photography. It's telling a visual story. So it's all of that. And don't just think about, well, I'm a terrible writer. I don't want to do content. Or writing scares me because my 4th grade teacher told me that I'm a bad writer. It's not writing. It doesn't have to be.
I love that.
Let me see. What else? Reimagine your existing content. A lot of times companies have content in their archives. Sometimes it's hanging on the wall of their offices because you might have some, an old poster or something that's some sort of collateral that you can use to tell the story of kind of who you are and where you came from, to give your backstory, so to speak. So we use the word reimagining in the sense of, what do you already have that you can maybe tweak and reimagine and share in a different way. So that's a good one. And then buy content roles.
I agree. And I'm going to link it up in the show notes. I love the book. And like I said, I really am going to go back and revisit it because I think it would make such a different impact on me today than it did when I was first starting out.
Yeah, that's interesting. When did you read it? A while ago?
It's been probably a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay. So
and I have a picture of myself out by the pool reading the book.
Oh, really?
During my non-compete time, right? I was learning.
Oh, that's awesome. You should send me that.
I should send you that. That's right.
Yeah, you totally should. Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this. Like I said, I'm a bit of a systems nut. Are you a systemized person? And if so, what type of systems do you use in your business and writing?
Yeah, with my writing, I'm really not that much of a systems person. Actually, I have it right here. This is my system for writing. This is my Moleskine.
That's much. So you actually paper and pen.
Yeah, I use paper and pen. I mean, that's for notes and
Sure.
for background stuff. I'm always thinking of ideas that I wanna jot down. So that's what I use that for. Um, but in terms of marketing profs, I mean, because we are a virtual company, we're about 30 people and we're all around the country essentially. So we do have a number of systems that we use there. We use Skype to keep in touch just throughout the day. We use Basecamp as sort of a project management tool for us. We use a private Facebook group to announce when someone's had a baby or a
Oh, that's great.
birthday or celebrations of some kind. We have monthly meetings through Adobe Connect where everybody is there and we're sharing kind of here's where we're at. It's kind of like a monthly summit that we do that talks about what's going on in the company, both from a personal perspective as well as more professionally. So we have a number of tools that we use there, but for me personally, I tend to be a little bit random in terms of. I
You know,
wish I would
listen, we know now that you're creative because you have multiple personalities at about the age of 7 to 9, right?
yes.
I usually say, hey, tell us something about yourself that most people would find fascinating. You told us, I didn't even have to ask, so that's even better. Hey, what do we see for your future? Any more books in your future? Where do we see Anne going?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that right now. I have a couple of projects that I'm thinking about doing. One tool that I'm really excited about, I wrote about it this week, is Vine. Have you tried out
You know, I
Vine?
haven't, but I'm a kind of a tool nut. I love that kind of stuff, so I need to
Yeah.
check it out.
So, I mean, I love content creation tools that make it stupid easy for
Yes.
people to create content that's different and fun and engaging. I wrote a piece on Marketing Profs this week about Vine because to me it's one of those tools that I think is really flexible and really fun and basically is really a good program or a good tool that I think a lot of brands will start to use. So
Oh, that's exciting. I have to check
it's
that
on,
out.
yeah, it's kind of like I think of it as like what Instagram did for photos.
Right.
I think Vine is going to do for video. So I think it's a cool thing. So that's my latest obsession, as my family would call it. So
Love it, love it. Hey, listen, if someone wanted to connect with you, where would you want to send them?
yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at MarketingProfs. My personal blog is AnnHandley.com. It's not updated very often, but when it is, I try to be entertaining. Or you can find me at MarketingProfs.com.
But do not send her an auto DM. Just
Yeah,
saying. Don't do it. Don't send me one either, by the way.
do it.
And this has been wonderful. I appreciate
This
your
is
time
great.
and everything that you're doing out there for
Thank you,
us.
Sheila. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you. Have a good day.
All right.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Successful Women Talk. Listen, a lot of people ask me, Sheila, how did you build a business from 0 customers in revenue to thousands of customers and multi 7 figures within a few short years? Here's the secret sauce. We had great products, excellent customer service, and this is key, we leveraged our systems and processes. If you want to learn more about this or how to reclaim your time, join me over at www.successfulwomentalk.com and I'll show you how to get the life, business, and customers you want. Thanks so much.